The Great Tao flows everywhere, to the left and to the right. All things depend on it to exist, and it does not abandon them. To its accomplishments it lays no claims. It loves and nourishes all things, but does not lord it over them. Lao Tzu. Good evening, everyone. How is everyone doing? So, been doing a lot of, I don't know, you would call it research, I guess. And I came up with this, and it's not like your Kabbalah or anything like that. It's very simple. Wanted to make it simplistic. Things that people of today can grasp and understand without it being too complicated. And it's not just duality, although it is a good part of it, but it's more than just the idea of good and evil, or just good or light and dark. I think everyone just kind of puts those two together, right? It's like good, oh, that's synonymous with light, or evil, that's just synonymous with dark. Not quite. I think as things get a little bit more complicated, it kind of expands away from this, but this is just kind of the core, I guess you could say, of just how philosophical concepts that turn into religious dogma end up being distorting this I don't know what you would call it. Let's just call it a core concept. Hi, Kaling. A cult is just keeping things hidden, right? So it's not necessarily evil, but it has some wisdom to it, right? Because the things that you don't see, that's part of the occult. It's to provide wisdom, but the ones who are man, this can get complicated. All right, think of it here as limbo. We've got earth as above, limbo so below. If you're looking to occultism or esotericism, you're gonna kind of notice that a lot. Now you've got evil is about control, and good is about freedom, free will, what have you. And so if you're talking about occultism is keeping things hidden from those who shouldn't know, it's you're keeping away the light, the wisdom, and you're controlling that knowledge for your own gain. And the less people know, the more power, the more you can have control over things. And because and people don't, you're basically controlling them through lies. You could tell them a couple of truths, right? But that's not really about control, because if they go, hey, wait, if he's telling the truth there, that means all those other things could be a lie. So basically you have to keep lying in order to control, because if someone figures it out, they have the ability to choose. So when we look at the polarity of evil, which is good, which is truth, which is freedom, right? You can't once you tell someone the truth, they've got the freedom to choose, because they understand what the truth is. They can make a choice. As opposed to if someone tells you lies, well, you don't know what it is. Basically, you're controlled, you're manipulated, because you don't they're basically all lies. So it doesn't matter what you choose, it's going to be based off of the result of the person telling you all these lies. But someone tells you the truth, well, you can finally make a decision, because now you understand what the consequences are going to be. So the cult is, I don't think it was meant to be. Maybe it was meant to be good. Who knows? I doubt it. But it was is meant to keep knowledge, the wisdom, um, divine knowledge, spiritual side of things away from just the masses or just people who you deem not worthy. Um, yeah, secret knowledge. There you go. So that's kind of how it just falls into a lot of these things, and just, there's just not enough references that I can put as far as like all the mythologies and stories associated with what might be good, what might be light, what might be evil, what might be dark, and a lot of it just it's hard to separate because in certain religions it gets so convoluted that one thing is pretty much the same as another. Um, just think of it as like Christianity, right? They'll say the devil, Satan, and Lucifer, they're all the same. They're actually not. They're just, it's differentiated. And what would be the difference between a demon and a fallen angel, right? So these things should be differentiated. And then if there is a fallen angel, well, there's got to be a risen angel. And basically, how are those created? In what way? And what are they imbued with? And what can they kind of fall away from where they're at? And which would be not a good thing, I guess you could say, because it just you're just away from your essence, I guess you could say. I hate to use so many weird words. Sometimes I listen to like Rudolf Steiner earlier today. It's like a lot of his stuff is very mysticism defined jargon, I guess you could say, because there's just, when he says something, I don't know exactly what he means, because it can be taken into scientific context, occult context, maybe even a literal context. It's very difficult because he'll keep repeating it. So I don't really know. I don't want to make it more convoluted and complicated than it is. It's just kind of like me when I'm trying to discuss technology in technical terms with people who don't really understand or know technical terms. So the best way to do it is to provide analogies, give them a very brief definition of what it is that may not fit the definitions that are given within like dictionary.com or whatever. Because a lot of it's just the same thing, like when you look up a word in dictionary, it just gives you the same word as a definition. It's like, well, thanks. That helps me a lot. Like, what was it? Office Space, where the person goes, what does launder money mean? So they'll look up in the dictionary, launder money, to launder money, right? It's like, what? That's just exactly what we're trying to figure out. So all right, trying to make that more clear. So I may go in a little bit more depth. What I did here is kind of, although I couldn't figure out the best way to use terminologies, right? I just have to pick one, right? I mean, there's so many different mythologies, different naming conventions, different symbolism based on one little thing, right? And to fit it all into just one word is it's not going to be easy, but trying to make it so it's really accessible to everyone so they can understand, they get it. It can easily be done, I think, more on when we see the dark side, which is just kind of the symbolism of ignorance and material. Right? Like light can't really pass through solids, the material aspect. You can take that as just more literal approach too. And one of the main, I guess you could say, antagonists is Ahriman, which is the polar of Ahura Mazda, which is of light. So the Prince of Light versus the Prince of Darkness. And so Ahriman, I like to put it as, human and demon, like, but and also not just the man part, Ahriman, human, demon. It depends on how you kind of say things, but get the gist, right? A demon is a dim man, lying in ignorance. And then human is one that's more towards the light, at least embodies the essence of light. I haven't quite got it down, but right, I'm trying to. This might change in some ways, but I don't want to make it too complicated. But you get the gist, right? And of course, what's that story? Humans were made out of clay, type of thing, made of the earth, made of material, and so we pretty much reside on Earth, where we're given free will, and free will in a materialistic aspect. So this is pretty much as we are now, and I think a lot of us, as far as like the religious context goes, whether it's Zoroastrianism or Abrahamic religions like Christianity, Judaism, and the Muslim. Sorry, I was going to say Islamic religions. They tend to have this heaven and hell, and usually hell is depicted as chaos, and heaven as order. But that's incorrect. As far as I am presenting it, it's incorrect. Everyone will say the opposite. But there's good reason why, because you can't have, if you have freedom, it's freedom from order. And if you're controlling things, you really want to have things in order. You don't want chaos. So therefore, this is how it is, not necessarily how it's depicted. So when people like the occultists say, I'm trying to say Latin, but basically order out of chaos. Well, you're trying to get get all the aspects of chaos out of the material. That way, you can have it more towards hell, full control, total control. It could also be kind of in limbo as well. But it's these opposites can be really confusing as far as Earth and limbo goes. I just had to put something. I was going to put Earth as the same as above and so below, but I just called it limbo. Other people would call it purgatory. So I just wanted to differentiate it a little bit, even though it's almost the same aspect. It's basically what are we fighting for? Heaven on earth or hell on earth, right? So it's basically that concept. And so we can have the concept of earth as it is, and we pretty much hope it to be, or what this place is becomes a limbo. And I think a lot of us wouldn't want that, but those who are in control, who can't get into heaven, you could say, just like the idea of Lucifer, the fallen angel, right? And they can at least rule in hell. Risen angels is something like Sophia is. She was just. She had to choose. You have to choose a side, pretty much. She kind of fell and decided, no, I'm going to tell the truth. What happened? But she has the freedom to express and make changes, and therefore that's what's going on. So she's a representation of a risen angel, something created out of light that is more towards the truth. Now it's the thing is, a lot of religions tend to make a avatar, a human hum, human-like embodiment of concepts, like God or Tao. It has some, as far as like a lot of religions, at least the ones that nowadays, God is depicted as in some form. But in actuality, a lot of the ancient religions, before the rise of Mithra, not quite Mithraism. There's like two forms of Mithraism. There's Mithraism that's spun out of Zoroastrianism, and there's Mithraism that's spun out of, Mithraism again, but basically Christianity. So then that was just Roman cult of Mithra. So it's hard to differentiate some of those things, especially if you just want to go by the written history. And of course, every written history is going to be biased. Don't think of that's why I put Tao here, trying not to make it like a actual embodiment of something, more of a concept, but you don't want to have it as a concept because that just makes things a little bit more convoluted. Just kind of the idea of the whole Tao idea is right, the Tao Te Ching. So that's why I put Tao in there as well, to associate with the true source, the highest God, whatever, right? It's not a manifestation, it's a concept. Let's just call it a concept. A concept that's not a concept. How about that? So on the evil, on the opposing side, right? It's really all about lies. It's really about deceiving, because the only way you can really control and manipulate is through deception and lies. And the concept of that can be the devil, or I didn't really want to put Satan or Shaitan in there, because that can also be, it's so convoluted with the dark, that I just want to keep it simple. Maya, of course, is the system of illusions, part of the lie, and in order for there to be some form of control. And as long as you can understand the whole concept of good and truth and freedom, and evil and lies and control, that's all you really need to know. That's where a lot of people become fooled, especially within religion, because I think I probably pick on the Abrahamic religions, Christianity, a lot more, because people don't recognize that they're probably not worshiping who they think they're worshiping or what they're worshiping, right? Because if they actually think about it, see who's in control, what it is that they're saying, that they're basically following the god of lies, you could say, or the concept of, that's not a concept of lies, evil, because it's all about control, manipulation, and it keeps them pretty ignorant. They're in the dark, right? That's why they're very much associated, because it's like, hey, let's keep them in my hell, because that's where it's our domain. The bad people, you could say. So it's not really. Each side can have a right or a wrong. So I didn't really want to put right or wrong. But it's easier to put kind of the symbolic representations of it. So if you want to keep someone in the dark, you want to keep them ignorant, but not necessarily. It's almost like keeping them stupid or uneducated type. But it's also not the case always, because they could, they could do a lot of studying. Someone tells them the truth, and they could logically think it out, and then they'll just be ignorant of that truth, and just be, okay, I prefer the lie. Let's just keep it. Let's go with the lie, and it just makes me feel better because then I could just say I'm doing good even though they're doing evil, right? They're just um, really focusing on the material and the lies and keeping things in control. But again, the whole lie and control is an illusion. And what we want is not an illusion. Just like if you want to think of Gnosticism, we want to see the truth. We don't want to see the illusion. We think this is the illusion. This reality is an illusion, but we really want to know what the truth is. And so they want to get away from the darkness, the ignorance, and towards the light and the wisdom. And to do that, you have to go rather than external, internally, right? In Zoroastrianism, it's very much the same thing. The good, the truth is more towards light. It's like almost a worship of Ahura Mazda, but it's not quite like a worship as in the Abrahamic sense, but just appreciation and knowing that what the light and it does and what's great is in the Lionish God that was written by Ali Mirkavandi in Iran back in the mid 20th century. I just did a video on it. It's very much similar to Zoroastrianism and Gnosticism in quite a few ways, and it's what's interesting is Ahura Mazda is more of a non-existent, non-embodied being, right? Very much like good. The concept that's not a concept of good, like the Tao, but like it doesn't operate in the material world, just the spiritual kind of the heavens, whatever you want to call it, and it's really about free will. So it pretty much operates here. You can say that's its representation, but there is the opposing force, Ahriman, which operates in the material and is the lord of this world, is the ruler of the material world. Earth is part of it, and of course hell. And it's trying to get up into heaven, and of course it can't go there. It can as much as be in limbo, but it goes and tries to defeat Ahura Mazda, but fails. In Zoroastrianism, it's the same story as in the Irradiant by Ali Mirkavandi, and happens twice. The first time is like, well, that didn't quite work out. Second time he gets defeated badly. 1,000 years, he's kind of unconscious, and after the 1,000 years, he comes out, and it's similar to some other story, a very Gnostic story, I think, where or hell isn't really a fiery place. It's more of a cold place, and all the demons are trapped in. If you think of like the flat Earth, the Antarctic Circle, that's where Ahriman would probably reside for 1,000 years, and eventually, as far as my dream, that's not quite a dream. I had the ninth circle, ninth sphere gets broken. That means he's gonna be released. So the idea is when he gets released, there's a final battle finally against Ahriman and Ahura Mazda, and pretty much Ahriman is pretty much destroyed or gone forever. And that story is represented in, you could say, Revelations, you could say Gnosticism, the Apocalypse, or the Apocrypha of John, in Zoroastrianism, and what Ali Mirkavandi had, a lot of those, probably even in Hinduism. I got brushed up on the Hinduism, but the idea of it is, yes, there's just the final confrontation, light or good finally triumphs over darkness and evil, and but you can't really get rid of evil, because free will, right? And this is what's great about this is it solves the question of good and evil. This entire thing, deism, Gnosticism, Zoroastrianism, a lot of that, it solves the problem. It's like, how did evil come into this world, type of thing. Well, can't have good without evil. And what is good? Well, if good is free will, it's freedom. It's the ability to have a choice, because we can only experience certain things with freedom. For example, I love, right? The concept of love is like, I want someone to love me for me. And well, if that person is your slave, or they were forced to marry you, and you're like, eventually he or she will love me. When that person doesn't have the freedom to choose to love you, is that really love? So you have to let that person freely choose, and within that freedom, they may love you, right? And therefore, that's actually love. And it's like, wow, that's great. There's a lot of bad things that could happen, or do happen with that, but at least you kind of get a good sense. So there's a lot of things that you cannot have without this freedom. But then within this freedom, there's a lot of things that occur that's horrible. But that's in the material realm, and that's where, if you think of it in Gnostic terms or Zoroastrian terms, it's only temporary until darkness is gone forever. So there's really no material realm. There's not going to be a hell. It's only going to be either at least heaven or limbo. And what happens in limbo is going to be more of who's going to want to stay behind until, right, they're given a choice to go either disappear and say, I don't like any of these places, I'm just done, or hey, it's not so bad, that you think. Of course, it's going to be almost the same as everything else, but your imagination, your freedom to imagine, your freedom to be, it's all there, So who knows what happens after that? This is as far as it went, as far as where we're at, where we could be, where we want to go, where we definitely don't want to go, type of thing. So deism. Now deism is interesting. It's convoluted, just like Mithraism and the cult of Mithra, just like occultism and esotericism. It's like, hey, what's the difference? Like, occultism is to hide, esotericism is what's not not widely known, I guess you could say. And, they kind of fit the same bill, just like good light and dark and evil. But deism in America, right, when we have like Thomas Jefferson, Thomas Paine, Bishop James Madison, and a lot of deists were very much about freedom. And they go, well, what about religion? It's like, because there are some deists that are very much against religion. It's even the Christian deists were very much against religion, but they didn't want to destroy other religions or prevent all of that, because they understood freedom plays a large part of what is good. So that's where we're at with the religious and the basically your freedom to choose who you want to worship, what you want to worship. Like, if you want to go for good, that's good. It's your choice. I think, a lot of people in concepts or angels, whatever, would really appreciate those who wanting to choose good over evil, but they really need to make that their own choice. Whereas those who are evil, well, they don't want to give you a choice. And that was kind of where the deism of like the French Revolution went. It's like we want we want to we've got the idea of work, of like the spirituality aspect, right? But we want to control it, so therefore no other religions are going to be out there. It's going to be purely secular. But the type of religion that we want to institute with secularism, whatever it is going to be what rules over others. And so it was almost the polar opposite. You've got America and France. Not that France is evil, but they're just on the aspect of control, the aspect of what could be constituted as evil. And a lot of people don't really like it, right? People who aren't in control aren't going to like those who are in control. But of course, they're going to be manipulated to like it, because that's how they get controlled. They're usually ignorant of what's going on because they don't understand either history or esotericism or other religions than theirs, or philosophy and all this other stuff. They're just whatever. They just watch like mainstream news and things like that, and that's all they need to know. So I just thought that was a just kind of a fun thing that you can kind of see, as far as how just one thing, which is deism, which is, you can say, it's just the spiritual aspect. And what deism says is very much like Zoroastrianism, and Gnosticism in some sense, because basically the deity, God, whatever you want to say, that is light and or just good, whatever, is created, but just kind of left things as it is, right? And that constitutes basically freedom. It's like, well, basically it created everything and said you're free to do whatever you want, right? And just you can even get that idea from Aleister Crowley, the occultist, the as above, so below. They do what you will, because if you don't, you're being controlled, and whatever you do isn't really legitimate. That term legitimate is a funny word, but that's the idea. Is if someone tells you to kill someone else, but you're being controlled into killing someone else, well, how that's probably a bad thing, but you also in being judged, like, well, you weren't really free to choose, so are you really, how can we judge whether it was a your act, right? But you did act. You thought you didn't have a choice, but you do have a choice, and so therefore that's where you can constitute as, no, that was an evil thing to do, right? You thought you really have a choice. You chose the darkness over light. You were ignorant of the choices that you had, the repercussions, as to, yeah, right, there's the opposite repercussions, but what are you going to choose? So I think it's the way I can say it is within, like, if there was a singularity, the oneness of things is kind of like the entire Greek, early Greek philosophers, from, I don't know if I should include Socrates, but maybe Plato onward, right? The concept of one becoming two and two becoming three, etc. In order for an aspect to just differentiate itself, it has to create a representation of itself, and usually the opposing representation of itself, so it can understand different aspects of itself, type of thing. So within the source separated good versus evil, well, one lies and one just tells the truth. And then within there, they so what emanated was good, evil. And then within those, it they kind of had the same things. Like, well, all right, we created some darkness and some light, and one is like willfully understanding what is going on, one willfully disregarding what's going on. You could just turn off the light. You have the option to turn on the light, or your control this not to turn on the light type of thing. Whatever it is, you're still in the dark. But what are you gonna do? Are you gonna try to find a light, see what's around you, or just stay where you are and wait, because that's just what you're told to do, type of thing. So a lot of the idea is, well, we're quite rebellious in nature. We have to be. That's what humans are, wherever we are here. But we're seeing a tendency to not be rebellious. It's like whoever's in an authority, the system of authority, which is pretty evil because they have to control, lie, and manipulate. And you're going to see that a lot. And you can't be ignorant of that, because if you actually do your due diligence, you understand that that's the modes of control. Well, you can't support it, so you're rebellious, and everyone else pretty much does support it. And you're trying to tell them all these things, and they go, "Wow, you're just crazy. You're whatever," right? They're just gonna name call and all of that stuff. But you just want to keep going. You keep trying. Eventually, things are gonna happen to you that you're not gonna like, and but you should have already made up your mind. You resigned yourself to the choice of, what's gonna happen, because you've chosen your side. In this place, you're against the opposing side, and man, it is not easy, because that's the whole thing. Is like, if we want to be free, we're going to be against, or those who want to control are going to be against those who want to be free. You got your slave masters, and a lot of religions tended to support slavery. One of the the things is that I forgot to mention, in Zoroastrianism and in Gnosticism, you've got the concept that darkness and evil will never defeat light and good. So what they do instead is to get the ones who have been created by good and light, which is humans and angels, and corrupt them and have them worship the darkness and the evil, rather than the good and the light. And basically, Gnosticism is kind of, I think, more of the realization of early Christians that Christianity is heading towards that, like that Ahriman or the devil is pretty much, hey, that's the religion of Ahriman and the devil. You guys gotta wake up. That's just think of who you're worshiping. Does it seem like a good deity? It's like, if that deity was a human instead, and that human did these things, you would probably persecute that human, but you allow it within that deity that you're worshiping. So that was the thing. And same thing with Irradiant, with Ali Mirakavandi and Zoroastrianism, is Ahriman finally understands through his ignorance that during the final battle, after the second battle, where he was just, it'd be like, getting knocked out by Mike Tyson second time, in the first round in like 15 seconds. Like, okay, you finally get it. You're not going to beat Mike Tyson, right? So what else are you going to do? Well, you're going to try to ruin his reputation or something like that. Maybe bad example, but that's the idea. Is like the Ahriman understands that outside of his domain, cannot defeat Ahura Mazda, and Ahura Mazda within his domain isn't going to interfere with Ahriman's domain, because that's he operates on the side of good, where if he wants to represent freedom. So that solves the question of why there isn't a good God that seems to interfere. Instead, there always seems to be some form of devilry going on where I snorted, where we just see a lot of bad things that keep happening, but there's some good things that are here. And what happened, I mean, if you think of it as like the ancient Maya, right? The Mayans, even the Egyptians, right? They had a year, a solar calendar of 360 days. Basically, the idea that the sun ended up being in the same position in 360 days as opposed to 365, and the reason why they say that is, well, things were perfect, and then something bad happened, and all of a sudden it went from 360 to 365. So this is the same mythology as in the Egyptian mythology and the Mayan mythology, and of course they're worlds apart, you could say. And it's like, how would they have the same idea? And then after all these centuries, finally someone goes, if it's not 360 degrees, which is a complete symmetrical circle, and it's 365, well, it's an ellipsis, not a circle. Well, why did it take 1600 plus or whatever years to figure that out? That should be easy enough. But of course no one did. So, a lot of written history doesn't make sense, but that's because probably the one in charge of history, if you want to call that Ahriman, really is pretty much ignorant and doesn't really care. He goes, people aren't going to be too smart to figure that out. And if that's the case anyway, they're going to be so controlled, and we're going to have so many other people controlled that they just try to say anything or tell other people. They're just going to be labeled as crazy, or we'll just call them heathens or devil worshippers, whatever, right? It doesn't matter if they are or not, but that's what we'll just get other people to believe, because other people can easily be manipulated. So that's where we are after generations and generations and generations, as we got to a point where a lot of people are just really ignorant. They're not really evil, but they allow evil to happen. They allow authority figures and people to take control. That's why you see so many dictators in different countries, is they don't really fight against these types of dictators. They think they can't really do anything, therefore they just go, well, what am I going to do? So they just kind of sit back, let it happen. Evil happens, more control, more lies, and a lot more material gain, a lot of what is it, I think in Zoroastrianism, again, they talk about good thoughts lead to good words, lead to good deeds. And on the opposing effect, there's 3 bad nets. Not quite Zoroastrianism. It kind of started heading towards the Abrahamic religions and Gnosticism in some form. But it got convoluted. Like fornication is a bad thing. Pollution is making the environment horrible, right? And I think lying, right, or something else, something similar to that. I may go more into it later. I mean, you're just going to see so many similarities between different types of mythologies, of different cultures and societies, and a lot of historians and even some mythicists are just going to keep saying, look, it's here. You can just do the research. It's just like, connecting A to B, B to C. And people won't look at it. They'll just go, it doesn't fit into their ignorant beliefs type of thing. Like if we get into fallen angels, Lucifer, Lightbringer, if you even go into the Muslim religion, you can substitute Lucifer for Iblis, and that will be exactly the same thing. You could substitute Lucifer for Satan, another type, even though it's not necessarily the same. You could it's sometimes you can even have it like Ahriman in place of Lucifer too. It gets that convoluted, but it's usually basically something that's light, that was meant to bring wisdom and truth is well, they the idea of like Lucifer, one of the storylines is, humans were created, and the god of either whatever good light, that concept says you should welcome the humans as your brethren, type of thing. And they're like, what are you talking about? I'm not gonna do that. Well, the evil would cast and like, hey, you're not obeying me? Well, get away from here. Therefore, fallen angel goes to limbo. Or maybe the good or light deity, etc. concept goes, well, you've freely chosen, but we can't have you here because we can't have this rift between your siblings, and therefore we gotta you go somewhere that's not necessarily really a bad place, but it's not necessarily here. It's not home. So think of it as a halfway house, whatever. So that's kind of the concept of limbo. And then of course you've got the all the risen angels that are in heaven. They just want to be helpful, type of thing, but basically free to do whatever they want, as long as they don't go into the concept of controlling, and they can't come to the material, but we can go to wherever. That's kind of the interesting things as us humans is, even though we're from the dark, we were actually given something special. That divine spark that's in different stories, where we can actually be more than just a man. We can be a man of light. Something very similar to being an angel, except where we operate is in the material realm, and therefore we're basically Earth is what it was meant to be, is the heaven aspect of the material aspect of what is spiritual, but on the side of good and truth and free will and freedom. But of course, with freedom, there's going to be ones who would rather have more for themselves, less for others. They would rather get away with things by blaming others than taking accountability themselves. People who would frame others, or what's that thing where you want to blackmail others, type of thing. So being very dishonest, deceiving, in order to gain rather than to share, type of stuff. Where you don't want to give other people a choice because you need to control and manipulate in order to keep gaining. We see this a lot, and you're going to see more people who are in those higher positions of control, or you could call them authority. They say they have the authority to do it. They have the reasons to do it because, and they'll explain whatever reasons that they want. And you have to follow along no matter what, because that's just what they said. So basically, it's this constant war against freedom and control. And in order to, and that's the thing is, well, it just seems like control is always going to win, because as long as they keep people ignorant, well, there's no one that's going to stop them. Well, there's still people, no matter what, who put freedom above all things, because that is the ultimate good. That's the ultimate truth that you can have. And well, I think the mistake is is that that when we die we're just gonna go into like hell or heaven. That's not quite so true. Is what happens is we're just kind of stuck in limbo, and the idea or the concept of reincarnation occurs until we realize, you know, we can't go into either or because we are not of that. But there is, you know, that whole divine spark, that little hue, a light within us, where ultimately we can get to here, but it's very difficult. It's I would say almost near impossible because it just takes so much sacrifice, letting go, faith of just having everyone else just the freedom to choose, even though it may perpetuate pain, misery, harm, agony to others that people cause, whether willfully or not. It's tough, but you have to allow it, and I think that's where we get a lot of certain prophets, which it gets convoluted. Like all a prophet is those who understand the will of God. Well, which God? And then that's the probably important thing you should figure out. But if it's the one true God, Tao, the good, well, it all has to operate on truth and freedom. So, I mean, obviously, you can't operate on lies. Otherwise, what kind of God is that? You know, it's the whole. I think that's why you get a lot of Bible literalists that gets really angry because they get pointed out all the hypocrisy, and it's like, well, you're taking it the wrong way, type of thing. Manitalk. Suppressing free speech is goal number one. Our inalienable rights and all a part of divide and conquer. Same old, same old. Yeah, it's the same old story. The idea history repeat itself. It's all there. I mean, it's just that has been the struggle since the beginning. You know, freedom and freedom from control. Or control and freedom from control, right? It's just, that's it. I mean, that's where everyone strives to be free. And once you're free, sometimes, well, you end up becoming not so good, and you just limit the freedom of others in order to gain more. And, you know, we see as far as this earth, more as having just material things, not necessarily knowledge or wisdom. And we see if we for example, if you talk to pretty much anyone in the world, and you just gave them a choice between person A or person B. Person A has a nice well-dressed suit on, has a house, like a very big house, very nice car, very nice family. You see his net worth and, you know, what he does as far as, you know, has a yacht and all this other stuff. And then you got person B who's just, you know, might have a small house, doesn't have a good, it's just really small net worth, have knowledgeable about a lot of things, focuses more on his small family rather than having a huge family, you know, doesn't have a good car, just kind of like a used or old car that he knows how to fix up himself, his small fishing boat, whatever, and really helps others when he can, but he doesn't have the means, whatever. You're going to say, who's the more successful? Almost everyone's going to choose person A, because it's very materially driven. Even though, if you think about it, if the system that was around wasn't there to support person A, person B would actually be more successful, because person B is self-reliant type of person, very knowledgeable about things, and knows where to focus his attention rather than gaining material things. Just focus on more of the things that are more than material. But it's almost like would you rather go to a vacation, bring a filming crew with you, and have hundreds of hours of video and pictures about you doing your thing in that spot, or would you rather go and focus all your time with the people that you're with and have good memories, right? I think a lot of people would choose to just go enjoy yourselves and have good memories. Maybe take a picture or two or a video or two, but really not focus on that. As opposed, and you get the idea of, well, that's kind of like a very egocentric person who just wants to take pictures and show how happy he is and that he's doing this to just people on Instagram and whatever, basically millions of people who really don't know that person or care too much, as opposed to just really focusing on the few that he or she can spend time with. So I would, that choice is yours. That's the beauty of it. But then if that choice isn't given to you, well, you're not going to like it, because it's like, hey, I don't want to be some rich motherfucker, that type of thing, right? I don't want to just focus on making money, buying a bigger house, buying an extra car or two, saving money to send the kids to college so they could do the same thing. And basically you send your kids to daycare 24/7 almost, as a school, right? You barely hang out with your kids because you tell them to study. You don't really play with them all too much. They have a basically babysitter or nanny and stuff like that. It's basically you're just like a guardian. You just let them do their own thing. Don't have be really a part of their lives. You just kind of provide for them, and that's it. So it's like, no, I don't want to be that type of person. I don't want my kids to have that type of family environment. Hey, Independent Outside, a long time no see. So the problem is I think there's multiple problems, but it's just every side of control, the evil side, you could say, whether it's religion, whether it's government, whether it's banking system, pharmaceuticals, it could even be science, because science, people in general have a tendency to lie. Even corporations, right? Who was that? There's a woman who's like in her 20s, right? They fooled the pharmaceutical industry and a whole bunch of huge, big corporations into spending a lot of money on them. And their concept was like having injectables that are regulated, self-regulating and automated, and it can figure itself out of how much it needs for your body to take. And she basically lied, right? She goes and she fabricated the results, the scientific results of the research study that she was doing. So all of that was faked, and hundreds of $1 million were spent. And she talked to this slow, deep voice and never blinked, and that was she was basically mimicking and copying that Apple guru guy who died, right? Because that's just kind of what he did. And basically it's the same thing. You just how to speak a certain way, how to act a certain way, articulate your voice, maybe even speak in more of a British accent, a higher voice, and become a more sophisticated individual where people will look at you as someone who is smart and knowledgeable and knows their science and things like that, right? It's just ridiculous. But it's an act. It's a way to personify yourself to the masses. And of course, that's not going to work on a lot of people who kind of see into these things. And it's like, hey, like I knew a person, I said this story before. She was a realtor. She's Iranian descent, Persian, and she's in her everyday English accent. It's just like how I'm talking. It's very just American. When she works, and she talks on the phone to people who are looking to buy a house. She starts talking in a British voice. I don't know how to do a British accent, but it's there. Is because she understood that she can be more posh and be one of the real estate agents that really operates in that type of environment. Because basically, I think they lived in the Bellevue area, right? Bellevue is very high, very people with a lot of wealth lived in Bellevue, Washington. And so, that probably wouldn't work if she was just selling houses that are like in the market for 70 grand or so in the suburbs, because, probably what works better is just having a nice southern drawl type of thing, just be more down to earth. And so there's ways to manipulate, not necessarily really evil, but just manipulating using form of control. They're just not necessarily how they normally act. That's not who they are. So all these little things, these little white lies types of stuff, not necessarily harmful, but not necessarily telling the truth. So, you're in that fine line. But I think, it's getting to that weird point. I don't know how we got here. I don't know. I think the ones who are in control figured out, you know what? We're just going to have control of it all. So it doesn't matter what people say. Like, look at me and my channel and just the amount of views. They still take my videos down. They still give me copyright strikes. There could only be certain narratives that I can talk about. Otherwise, it's hate speech or something, right? Like that, right? But that still doesn't stop me, because basically regardless of what the results are, I'm still going to do it. They'd have to punish me a lot more severely than they are. And of course, in order, they can't take down all my videos. My videos will exist in some form or another that's accessible. It's just going to be more difficult to find. And they're finally realizing this and go, well, that's why you got the whole idea of shadow banning. And so you're never going to see my videos. I could probably do a test. I just need multiple accounts, but you'd never see my videos recommended to pretty much anyone else who doesn't really like my videos, I guess, or subscribe to me. It's not like you watch something and go, oh, here's Ebon. Here, we'll recommend you a video by Ebon, even though you're not subscribed and you've never really watched. It's, it's not gonna, they're not gonna operate that way, because they would rather have you start watching someone who has a lot more views, content that's something that they really don't care if they discuss or not, but certain topics they need to have a handle on themselves. It's just like when you want to go ahead and ask someone a question who's in a form of authority or celebrity figure. It's like, who are you? I'm sorry, we don't have time for your question. We're just going to someone else. Usually pick that individual that asks that specific question. Otherwise, they wouldn't have a filter, right? When you call up, like I did for NPR once, this was maybe 8 years ago or something. The guy who took over the Daily Show, Trevor Noah, was on NPR in an interview, and I called in and I finally got through, and so they go, so what's your question? And I go, and so I said, this is my question, and they go, thank you, hold on. And so basically I could hear in the background when they finally got through, it's like, yeah, here's this question, and it goes, no, and so the lady on the phone goes, I'm sorry, thank you for the question, but we're gonna go on to another caller. It's like they didn't want to answer that question, right? Because there are certain things that they don't want people to know or even have that question being asked and mulling it over. So there's that one-way communication thing that I always talk about as well. And that's the thing is, a lot of the things that are usually in this aspect is very, very, limited. It's a one-way direction. It's like it's a big club and you ain't in it type of thing with George Carlin, right? And as far as this, it's like all of this is just free. It's out there. You can experience it. You can research it. All of this stuff. It's accessible. The only thing that really stops you is your own ignorance not to, or just basically you're being controlled in order to not be able to get a lot of these things. I think what I can see as far as strategic planning, like if I was in this situation and really want to control people, like previously they burned books, right? But the thing is, people would be able to still keep printing individually. Well, they got rid of a lot of these older books, right? Think of like one place near you that's still operating as a bookstore. That's not like Barnes and Noble that's still around. Even the Barnes and Nobles are going away. But basically, your old bookstore. I think, places like Seattle, the West Coast, San Francisco. Big. They were really big on those types of places. Very hipsterish places to go. Of course, now it's coffee shops, but basically, bookstores used to be the thing. But usually, but that would be as if you want to appear with have a certain perception. But basically, a lot of people who really wanted to study and really look into some of these, what people in different generations or certain people at a certain time were actually writing about that time period, that's different than what the mainstream historical records are saying. That can't be accessed anymore. Those books are gone. I don't know if they're burned or not, but they're not digitally copied anymore. It's almost difficult to find those books. And that's just going to be the way it goes. It's like, what do we have left is just digital archives that's picked and chosen, and sometimes search recommendations will find it for you, or they'll just be denied. I think, just think of it like if you do Google search, right? Your search results will sometimes say, here's this out of 7.2 million records. They only show you like up to maybe 100, 200 records, let alone those 7.2 million that they won't show results for. So they can easily omit things. So we're easily getting to a point where we're just seeing all the stuff that we're hand fed to see, and things are being less free to access, more controlled. So I think people are kind of noticing that, and I think people are starting to just wake up and saying, "Well, what's the ultimate fight? What is going on? What do we really care about?" And of course, they'll see that their freedoms are usually taken away because it's like, well, it's not like a big deal. What's the big deal of me being able to read maybe Mein Kampf? Mein Kampf is a bad example, or like Mark Twain books or something. Like Mark Twain was very controversial back then, especially now again, with cancel culture saying, well, he said the N-word back then, so we should ban his or burn his books. It's like, that's in the context of the day. Even like certain presidents use those words. We can't really, you're not gonna get rid of all their stuff. So, and of course, all that cancel culture is pretty much perpetuated to control and manipulate people. So just another form. So this information age, disinformation age, what comes next? Well, what's interesting as far as mythological stories, again with Gnosticism and Zoroastrianism, is that Ahriman or Satan or even Lucifer, who operates down there, knows what's going to happen. It's even with full control, they can kind of foretell the future and what the results are, and they're trying whatever they can to prevent it and control everything. And of course, the good and light, they go, well, it's going to be chaos. You're never going to figure it out, right? But they know for sure, like, certain things aren't going to happen. But they're also imbued with it. It's like maybe not Ahriman, not Yada, but the alternative term for Ahriman in Gnosticism. But it's they eventually understand they're not really ignorant anymore. They're born from ignorance, but they figure things out and they go, well, we're going to utilize that knowledge, that wisdom, and we're going to control people with it, because they can't win. Since they can't win, well, what do? You prevent others from winning. Right? If you're that bastard type of individual, maybe bastard's not the right term, asshole type individual, you're like, well, I'm not gonna win, but I'm gonna be sure as hell that you're not gonna win either, type of thing, right? Because there's nothing, if they can't do that, well, they're gonna prevent others from doing it. So that's just kind of where we're at, and it's like, well, how do we deal with that type of stuff? It's like, this is like it's like, what can we do? How can we operate within the sphere of freedom, and give them that same choice when they don't provide the same thing to us? Is that something that we can actually fight, have a war with, and still be okay with it? I mean, it's just like, how far do you go of giving up freedom itself in order to be more free? Right? It doesn't make sense, but it starts being very convoluted and hypocritical, and that's where you don't want to go. So it's like, what's the solution? Are we limited now to what we can do just because we've they figured it out? They know all that they need to do, and therefore there's nothing we can do to stop it, and so we're in an impasse. Does it all just go down to here, right? And so we had to constantly think of new things to do. Even Americans, they don't ever want a revolution on their hands. They're like, no revolution, no, we don't want people dying, even though people are dying slow deaths for centuries in some form of social enslavement, not necessarily physical enslavement. And not to mention that the United States of America was founded on a revolution. It's still operated within that frame of ignorance. It's like, no, we can't have people die in a war in order to take down all the corrupt people who are in control, who are taking away people's freedoms as well, type of things. And I just think that's weird and funny at the same time, sad and funny. And then that whole idea of, well, what was the sacrifice of all those people, all those Americans who didn't get to see America as they wanted to, all those soldiers fighting that revolution that died, and even those who they fought against who probably were controlled in some way, which if they were free people like the militia in those days during the Revolutionary War, they probably may not have even wanted to participate. They may have even supported the 13 colonies and stuff like that. So the sacrifice on both sides, well, all that goes away, and it's in vain if it still doesn't uphold or the whole idea of what the country was founded for. They figured that stuff was worth dying for. So that way, the whole concept of dying so that your sons and daughters and grandsons and granddaughters wouldn't have to make that sacrifice themselves. But of course, it's gotten to that point where the people these days are a little bit more selfish. They would rather have their kids do all that because they don't want to get to that point where they make the it's like going to a negotiating table with some like, say, Genghis Khan was going to conquer your lands, and you go, well, we're not going to fight you, and if you do fight us, we'll probably surrender, but here's what we're going to offer in return if you don't decide to take us over. We're going to give you it's like 10% of our barley. Does that sound good to you? It's like Genghis Khan's gonna be like, dude, you're not gonna even fight us? We'll take whatever we want. It's like, why do we want to take a 10% of whatever of barley, right? So you don't go to the negotiating table saying that you're not going to do you're not gonna like put your foot down. You know, it's like the worst thing ever. But that's where we're at, and I don't know if that dynamic will ever change. So it'll be interesting to see. I think it'll be like all the dystopian stories, like all the utopian stories back in the day. We're nowhere close to that. All the dystopian stories that we've heard back in the day, like 1984, Brave New World, and even a whole bunch of other things, like was it the Tale of Two Cities and uh oh the author Philip K. Dick, he wrote a story that's very Gnostic, that was very similar to the Zoroastrian story, and of course typical Gnosticism, and that's based off his was it pink beams of divine wisdom. I need to go more into that. I think I'll probably do some sort of talk related to that, or some research, and just kind of piece everything down for people as far as this diagram I'm showing, just so people can understand where I'm coming from rather than just hearing me just babble. I mean, what's great about this is just if I showed this and had a conversation like CG Dolan or someone like that, and he'll understand. He goes, "Yeah, I can see that. Maybe I wouldn't put it there. You know, why did you put that there?" Type of thing, and maybe like different names. Like it was like, "Oh, do you know that? Like rather than Ahura Mazda, you can probably put in someone else's name. This name from maybe the Egyptian deity or something else like that. Like, you know, that's interchangeable because this is the same story told in different cultures, different time periods, but the same thing that they say is occurring, and they've all pretty much been wiped out, almost all of them. Like Zoroastrians, there's only like 250,000 in the world. That's what the last count was. Gnosticism and you know, Zoroastrian has probably changed a lot over like the last 2 centuries. Gnosticism is kind of having like a new upbringing, but it's not the same Gnosticism as in the past. It's almost kind of new agey in some ways, and so you've got a lot of these old myths that are trying to warn people about what's actually happening, and that the religions that are in control or attempting to take control are turning things upside down. You're not worshiping good in the light, you're actually worshiping evil in the dark. You're making all these things that are horrible into things that you support, and all the things that you should support is being something as horrible. You know, everything's just kind of upside down, topsy-turvy. And well, what happened to them? Well, all those people who warned of these things, you know, they're gone. They got shut down. We see this repeatedly happen. And it's like, well, if we actually operated on truth and freedom, and you know, the getting people not to be ignorant but to be wise, and not focus on material things, but you know, things that they can enjoy, because they can't. There's only a certain level of enjoyment you can have with the material, you know. Whereas other than material, it's like, wow, just, you know, you're just happier, more fulfilled. You don't have to worry about all this upkeep and security and whatever egoism type of stuff. It's just really laid back, and appreciate what there is that's usually just easily maintained and given. It's like, you don't, if you like the things that we focus on now about growing our own crops, a lot of the food that we can eat that we consider weeds are good. A lot of people, a lot of these plants that we call ornamental nowadays have a lot of great uses, but they're just seen as ornamental things, and also illegal to eat or use like as psychedelics, right? But they'll allow it if you use it as ornaments, grow them as ornaments. So more people are just kind of seeing into that and realizing, well, holy smokes, um, things have taken a bad turn. Just like when I started fishing, it's like so much fish in back in the day, and a lot of the fish went through the river systems and the stream systems. And well, once all these rivers and streams got dammed up, well, those fish that are from the ocean can't reproduce because they're not spawning anymore. I think certain places are trying to reintroduce them, but still, have some access ways where they can go upstream through certain dams. But that's not working out too well, is it? We keep trying to make take control of nature, and we end up making things worse. When we leave nature alone, it seems to operate just fine by itself, right? And that's kind of like the whole human and science debate. It's like, well, nature is pretty much flawed. That's usually like the very Abrahamic approach, that nature is flawed, and that humans are here to make it better by, except that's never been the case ever. You would think science at one point would be get things that are more efficient and better than nature does, but it doesn't seem to ever work out that way. I'm saying a lot, so I think that's it. Thank you for joining me. Great to see a lot of old faces. Not that you guys are old. You guys are old just like me. You know what I mean. All right. Have a good night. My next one, I am trying to make a video that's not me just doing a live stream, but it's very tries to tie in a lot of things, so it's not really just me speaking on the just whatever comes to mind and how I just formulate things, but it's kind of written down. It has a lot of music that'll have some emotional connotations. It's just a way of manipulation and control. Sorry, but it'll be a little bit more entertaining for you, at least, in order for you to look into some of these things in this concept of that should not be a concept, right? So I'm hoping to finish that, but who knows? I think the more that I display this and tie things together and probably get people angry at me, especially those who are like, if I tell them that, are you sure you're worshiping good and light and not evil and darkness? And like, they'll be like, of course I am. You are a heathen or something, heretic. And it's like, goodness, I can't get through, right? And then someone's probably gonna want to come out and kill me or something like that. So whatever, I'm ready to go. So I don't know, who knows? It'll be interesting to know, although I wouldn't know. Maybe not, someone killed me, but maybe that'll bring more validity to all of this that you should look into. But you may not, because you're scared to look into it because what happened to me. So how do I react? Freedom to defend and fight, take it to the offensive, right? It's like, I don't know how I should choose to go about against tyranny, right? People would say, dude, you shouldn't really fight back against authority. That's evil. That's bad. Actually, not doing that is actually evil or bad, right? It's like, it's like hindsight. How come no one did anything when people, like the Jews, were being gassed in gas chambers? Why didn't anybody do anything? It's like, well, it's easy to say that now. Same thing across the board, all history. You don't have to focus on the Jews. Maybe like the Young Turks, right? All that stuff. The or Taiwan, Philippines, a whole bunch of places, wherever, almost Native Americans. Like, hey, where were you? What were they doing? Huh? Why didn't they just fight back? Why didn't they stand up? Well, because the people that, not necessarily you that I'm talking to, but you know, maybe you guys still hesitant about like revolution and fighting against all this stuff. And it's like, well, you know, you don't want to get people killed. It's like, well, not preventing people from getting killed by authoritarian tyranny, dictators, whatever, is gonna get people killed, and then you can't do anything about it. That's it's like you can't deny history that it's gonna happen again because it keeps happening, and we keep going around. But that's just another story, I guess. I don't know. I think a lot of people are just being more aware. That's good. The awareness of vicious circles is just another video I did. You'll see COVID-19 is just a big one. I think a lot of people is just finally figuring things out. It's like, hey, COVID-19. I don't think it's quite what it is. It's like those vaccines. Wow, they're not mandatory, but you know, if they're offering compensation to take it, like incentives, shouldn't be the incentive be, you know, not dying from COVID-19 incentive enough to take the vaccine? If people really believed in COVID-19 and that vaccines worked, well, then you wouldn't really need incentives to take the vaccine, because most people just don't want to die and get sick and have their kids or family members sick and die either. So why offer incentives? Obviously, a lot of people just aren't really buying into the whole thing, and I think that's a good sign. There's still a lot more things that people need to be more aware about and really think about. It's like, hey, why do they keep offering incentives for this? Because shouldn't this be its own incentive type of thing? And I think people are going to start figuring things out. I'm the eternal optimistic pessimist. So, or is this the pessimist optimist? Right? You know, that whole duality of opposites thing, a little bit of both. Okay. Sorry. I just keep rambling on. Good night.